Olam Asher Kitchanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asot Torah.
Let us not only soak up words of Torah, but also the wisdom that is going to come from everybody else in this new community for me. Rabbi Fox and I will be alternating weeks. Okay, we will also begin today with the Misha Beirach. If you have somebody whose name you want to add to the list, please feel free to do so. The names that I've received from the temple are Michael Alkov, Bonnie Chizik, Megan Catuno, Stan Davids, Chaim David, Karina Wallen Harar, Cindy Jacobson, Marvin Levy, Helena Knapp, Chuck Polip, Quincy Rose, Nicholas Shapoff, Jill Center, Jim Sherman, and Shraga Stern. Any other names you'd like to add? Brad, I want to add you since you just have one more month till you get your final good news. And I have to tell you, to me, you're looking awfully good.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Cindy, do you have a name to add? No.
I was just seconding Brad. We're also happy how well he's been doing.
Everyone, please feel free to unmute, pop in, jump in whenever you want. It doesn't disturb me in the least, okay? So who remembers what this Shabbat is called? Because there's a special name for it. Okay, Fern, can you unmute, please?
We were just told last
Remembrance.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Shabbat Zachor.
Zachor.
Is
Yeah.
Zachor, and that means?
Shabbat of remembrance, memory.
Okay, this is always the same Shabbat before Purim. And the reason that they have this one is that we're supposed to remember something awesome that happened. Anyone know? I'm sure you do. You just have it pushed down. When the Jews were leaving slavery, they were attacked by Amalek, and they did something that really contradicts the manners that you're supposed to have in war, the rules of warfare, by attacking the back of the procession where the women and the defenseless children were, instead of the front where the military was. So we're supposed to always remember Amalek. And you might be saying, what does this have to do with Purim? So you think of somebody else, the villain.
Yeah.
Haman.
Haman.
Everybody knows Lisa Beth.
Wanted to destroy the Jews. Haman says to Achashverosh in the book of Esther, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the other people in the provinces of your realm, whose laws are different from any other people. It is not in your majesty's best interest to tolerate them. So there's a wonderful rabbi in Florida, Michael Simon is his name. He's at Temple Beth Kaddish, and he points to the phrase "a certain people," and he says that means somebody who looks differently, who dresses differently, who acts differently, whose laws are different from ours. This is classic anti-Semitism. So today, on Shabbat, it's particularly important to remember not only Haman, but also Hitler and every other anti-Semite living or dead who threatens our safety and well-being. Now, I think like everybody else during the pandemic, I watched way too much TV, but there was one series on Amazon Prime starring Al Pacino, and it took place in the 70s, and the people in it were trying to catch the beginning of the Fourth Reich right here in the States. So what we have to do is be ever mindful, because what would you do if you found out somebody living really close to you was an anti-Semite? It's just a terrifying proposition, but it's probably very realistic. Sometimes I hear statistics about how many people have never met a Jew, or who don't believe in the Holocaust, or whatever it is. It just seems so unrealistic to me. Okay, so let us, and what I want to know is, I found out the pages of 4 different books. If you have Plaut, this chapter, which is called Tetzaveh, is on page 475. No, I'm sorry. It's on page 563. If you have the Women's Torah Commentary, it's on page 475. If you have JPS, it's on 172. And if you have Hirsch, it's on 320. Did I not mention any books any Chumash that somebody has? Natalie, you're on mute. Still can't hear you.
It's the Tanakh.
Which Tanakh is it?
Just says the Holy Scriptures, Tanakh. We read from this a lot. We always get these pages.
That's the Plout.
Plaut.
Can
That
we,
was the first.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Anyway, you don't.
can we have chapter and verse?
Yeah,
It's
chapter.
easier to just find it by chapter and verse if you don't have a.
Yeah,
I use an interlineated Schottenstein, and as long as I have chapter and verse, I don't need a page number.
that's right.
We're in Exodus chapter 27.
Perfect.
And it starts with verse 20 and it goes to chapter 30.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so all of what we've been talking about is things that we should remember as a whore, be ever vigilant and remember our enemies. But it's also a time to remember something good. If you think of the 10 Commandments, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat l'kadsho, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And as Jews, we are mandated to celebrate life. You always put something happy over something sad. If there's a wedding and a funeral, you go with the wedding. Okay, so one other book I want to mention, I don't know if any of you have it or have seen it, but this is Rabbi Harvey Field's set of 3 paperback books, and it's called The Torah Commentary of Our Time. It is excellent. If you have difficulty plowing through the language of the Torah, this says it all. And one more thing for show and tell, because Purim is coming up next week. This is my illuminated book of Esther. And in it, it shows that the feasts that Achashverosh had only had men there. So I have nicknamed this chapter, which is Tetzaveh, clothes make the man. If you think because we're going to talk so much about clothes, but if you think about Purim, think about the fact that Achashverosh asked Vashti to come and dance in front of all of his friends naked. And the only reason Esther got the opportunity to later save all the Jews was because of the clothes that Vashti wouldn't take off. And then we'll see in this chapter that there is such elaborate detailing of what the priests were wearing. It was absolutely incredible. And it makes me a little bit sad that we've lost some of this, but who has seen Conclave? The Catholics still do it. They have those costumes. Uniforms and what people wear are more significant than you would think. For instance, if you were living in Europe during the second, oh, Natalie, did you want to say something?
No, I just,
All right, just waving. All right. During the Second World War, you saw a Nazi uniform, and it immediately would strike fear in the hearts of anyone who saw it. So now, fast forward 80 years, and think of people who are here undocumented who see ICE uniforms. Even think of something as harmless as football uniforms on Super Bowl Sunday, but they do something to our emotions. And so that was why these uniforms, these costumes had to be so elaborate and so perfect. And while many of the items that were described for them to wear were not available in the desert, I don't know when this was added. We don't really know because the Torah was cut and pasted, but the idea of it, the concept of it was just magnificent. Okay. So I don't know if you've ever seen a woman who is wearing a necklace that has either heads or discs, and it has the names of all their children or their grandchildren. They're really beautiful. And is it because they want everybody else to see what the names are? No, maybe it's because they want the names close to their heart. So think about poor Aaron, who not only is going to have all these beautiful garments, but he is also going to have to wear on his heart the names of all of the tribes. One other thing I want to tell you about Tetzaveh, if you change the first letter to a mem, it becomes, instead of Tetzaveh, it becomes a mitzvah, which is a commandment. So this commandment is a way, these commandments that are in the Torah are a way to live a better life. And Tetzaveh was also my bat mitzvah portion many, many, many years ago. Okay, one of the other things that's important in this is they talk about this chapter as being the origin of the Ner Tamid, the eternal light. But it really was not. And does anybody know why? Okay, Steve, you have to unmute.
Because it actually wasn't on 24 hours. It was lit in the morning and extinguished at night.
Ah, that's one explanation I hadn't read, but the fact that you have the interlinear, you're probably getting to read between the lines. The story that I heard is there was that 7-branch candelabra that was carried off by the Romans. There were 3 of them, and they must have lit them on 8-hour shifts. But when the Romans attacked in 70 CE, they took them as booty. And so someone else decided, well, let's just have one light. And that light stayed on all the time. And we see it now in all temples. And it's also been adopted by the Catholic Church. Okay, let us take a look and read what it said on page, if you're on Plout, we're now at chapter 28, verse 29, and in Plout, it's 565. In the women's commentary, it's 480, and in JPS, it's 174. And could somebody read, please, chapter 28, sentence 29?
There is none.
I'm sorry?
I'll do it if you want.
I'll do it. Yeah.
I'll do it.
Go.
I'm sorry, did you say chapter 28?
Yeah.
28, 29. It starts with Aaron shall carry.
Who's reading? I'll read, okay. Oh, who else wanted to read? Was there somebody else?
I'll do it at next time. Go ahead, Natalie.
All right. Aaron shall carry the names of the sons of Israel on the breastpiece of decision over his heart when he enters the sanctuary for remembrance before the Lord at all times. Inside the breastpiece of decision, you shall place the, yes.
Natalie, stop there. I just wanted it to at all times. Okay. So stones, according to Rashi, and each stone had 6 names. The first stone said Reuben, Simon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali. The second stone had Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. And if something does not seem right to you, it's because it isn't. Can anybody tell me about the tribes of Israel? Did you ever hear of a tribe named Joseph?
Right.
Oh, no. No, dear.
Or a tribe named Benjamin? Anyone have any thoughts about that?
Mm.
And I have to apologize to you. I have had a problem with my throat for a while. It is getting better. It's not contagious, but I'm not usually this creaky, croaky.
Mine too.
Okay, 2 of the names were changed. Joseph and Benjamin were changed. They are not part of the tribe. They were later replaced by Manasseh and Ephraim. Ephraim means to be fruitful, and Manasseh means to make one forget. And these represented what happened to Joseph when he was in Egypt. Because in the beginning, he had a miserable existence being in the prison, being falsely accused. And then later, he became fruitful, he became successful, he had children of his own. So Jacob actually adopted Joseph's 2 sons as his own to make them part of the lineage. All right, so something else that I found particularly interesting and a little weird is where it's talked about putting blood on the priest's earlobe, thumb, and toe as part of the investiture. The investiture, of course, is when he becomes the high priest. Anyone have any ideas about this? Okay, if you think of people who wear tefillin, they wear one on their head and they wear one on their hand. Anyone know why you do that?
No.
Okay, if you have something on your head over here, it's to remind you when you think of something, you should only think about doing good. And with your hand, when you do something, you should only do something good. So there's a similar storyline that goes on with this. And Philo says, it signifies that the perfect man must be pure in every word and action as a whole. For it's the hearing that judges his words, the hands that are the symbol of his action, and the foot that symbolizes the way a person walks through life. So
I'm wondering,
yes.
it seems odd to me that putting blood is somehow a good thing on the men, since there's so much spoken about women being impure because of blood, and blood is usually used as a negative, and it appears to be in this situation a positive.
Okay, but think about not so many years before, when they were escaping from Egypt and they wanted the angel of death to pass over their house, they would mark the door with blood. But that's a very good.
What do you make of the dichotomy between women are impure because of blood and we use blood to summon good fortune?
No, I never thought of this before. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. But one of the things that they do when they sacrifice an animal is they get rid of all the blood.
Yeah.
So if some of it was put on the horns of the altar, and for some reason they decided to mark the high priest this way.
Rabbi, this is Ray. I'm jumping in since you invited us to have this kind of Zoom anarchy. You may regret it. And I will just offer a yin-yang way of considering the blood on the lintels. I don't know that it's absolutely known to us that then grants the blood a positive connotation, even though end justifies the means. The result is that the angel passes over and doesn't afflict the household. But I postulate we could read it as either a positive or a negative, absent further information. And we could consider that perhaps the blood is a don't stop here. It may be the equivalent of a biblical era ADT burglar alarm sign saying, get off of my lawn. So even though the outcome is that the household is spared, I'm not sure we can absolutely draw from that the inference that the blood itself has a positive connotation. I think both might be possible.
I think my home alarm is very positive, Ray.
Vern, I'm touched by what you said, because the inequality in the whole Torah is
I noticed.
get the short. Okay, so one reason why this portion is kind of special to me. Oh, Jonathan.
Well, I just wanted to say, well, first on a secondary issue, when we say women are impure because of blood, that I don't know if it's necessarily like a sexist issue or having something to do with women, because also when a man emits semen, that is also impurity. Any emission of fluid, and then sex also, in a certain way, is an impure kind of an act. The Catholics and a lot of people from a lot of religions really, down on sex and all that, and I think they really take a lot of the concepts too far, but that does exist. And one of the things that I kind of thought about, the idea that the priest has to have blood on his ear, his thumb, and his toe, is sort of like there's a redemptive and positive effect to being able to acknowledge and recognize the pain, a lot of the pain and the suffering that goes on in life. And so if you go through life and you're pretending there's no blood around, okay, there's no suffering, there's no passion, there's no pain, everything is fine, everything is normal and hunky-dory, then you're living in a kind of a fantasy land. And so if you're really going to be like a priest to a people, And the high priest, is sort of a symbolic of being a nation of priests. That you're going to have to listen for the blood. You're going to have to, you're going to have to hear the truth that is sometimes bloody. When you do things with your hands, you are going to have to get your hands dirty, and you're going to have to acknowledge, my hands are dirty. And when you go and walk around, you're going to have to acknowledge, there's blood here. We don't live in a perfect world. We don't want we don't want to become mired in depression and fatalism and all of that sort of stuff. And that actually is a part, I think, of the redemptive and divine aspect of blood in the Torah. That there is a positivity about interacting with the truth that, to a certain degree, requires an acknowledgement that we live in a bloody place. That there are bad things that happen, and so on. So that's one of the things that I kind of pull from this priest that's being laid out in this massive symbolic tapestry that's very beautiful in a lot of ways. He has to have blood on him if he's gonna be, like an accurate depictor of truth and life on earth, in a sense. So that's one thing I've been thinking about since on a Sunday class a few weeks ago. We were talking about a progressive rage and sort of the tension. We don't want to get lost in just depression and negativity and all of that, but we have to acknowledge that there are things wrong and things going on if we're going to be connected to the truth. So that's one reason why I think it could be a good picture that an accurate priest or teacher or presenter of the symbols of the divine and the message of the divine has to, be listening to the blood, working with the blood, and walking through the blood. If he's if he's really going to be accurate.
Okay. Before Fern and before Marina, I just have to say that was such an astounding explanation that I think you should teach the next time. Okay, Fern, tell me what.
No, let Marina go first. I spoke already. Marina, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I was thinking about what Fern mentioned, and to my mind, the impurity of a woman may be related to a prohibition of sex during a woman's period, and it doesn't designate the flow as dirty. While in another part of the Torah, we read that blood is life. So it's possible that putting blood on the priest is anointing the priest with blood. They may be not connected, these two commandments.
Thank you.
I'll let that stay. I still don't agree. It's clear to me. It's clearly pejorative, but I want to address what Jonathan was speaking about and saying that the priests needed to be able to think about and keep in their heads that life involves suffering as well. And I just wanted to slightly amend that to say that I think it would be good to think of it not simply as they need to think about it. They need to feel it in a visceral way. Our priests are not simply above us, in the kind of Catholic hierarchy. And I think it's important that our leaders not only think intellectually, but feel what other people are feeling, that they join humanity, and that the words we use, they really do matter. They reflect what needs to happen. And I think the humanity of it is what's so important.
Beautiful and astute observations from you all. Thank you. One thing, since we were talking about, Mark and Harv have raised their hands. So
Mara. Just one comment that the pouring out all the remaining blood at the base of the altar reminds me of koshering an animal. And it strikes me that since the breastplate is placed over the heart, and we're now talking about making something kosher, that there's a suggestion that what's going on here is creating a model for doing kashrut for our hearts. And that part of this is about not how the priest must behave, but how we must behave with purity of heart and thought.
Wonderful. Ray.
Thank you. I have a question coming right on the heels of Mara's beautiful observation. Question to anyone in the group who thinks they know how to answer it. The metaphor for heart as the center of feeling and conscience is clearly a very old one, but could anyone possibly identify how long that has been with us? Would that metaphor have been understood at the time of the redaction of Torah? Would it have come later in Western thought? Does anyone have any sense when the earliest instance of heart as a metaphor for feeling even occurred?
We need to ask Siri.
I'm sorry, who did you say you need to ask?
Siri.
Siri. Oh, I thought there's a physician named Gary who used to be in Torah study. Schiller, I think, is his last name. And maybe he would know. I don't. But that's a great question.
Rabbi?
Please.
Yeah, building on Ray and Mara, a couple of weeks ago, we read a passage where we heard the words circumcising the heart. So, which is a really mixed metaphor, speaking of metaphors, but, you know, I mean, of course, that there's also a blood image there, but in sort of a positive sense. Of course, we think of circumcision as a, you know, the compact between us and God. So,
it's a way to really get to the heart also.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, so we have this incredible costume that the priest is wearing. We have the blood on his ear and on his thumb and on his toe. And this was in such incredible contrast to the way he normally dressed, because the role of the high priest would be to do the sacrifices. So he was just a glorified shochet, a glorified butcher. And now he's wearing these amazing costumes. Have any of you seen either the opera Aida or the musical Aida that Elton John did? There's a song in it that the Nubian princess Aida, the enslaved Nubian princess, sings, called "My Perfect Suit" or my favorite suit. And she talks about the importance of clothes in her life. So we can see how for this investiture, those clothes were so important. In the women's commentary, and oh my goodness, we're running out of time, but I'm going to speed through this. And then we have a minute for questions, and then we have to move on. In the women's commentary, it says that Laura Lieber says that the rabbis felt each and every item had a deep symbolic value. And while some are more difficult than others to connect, a lot of them did make sense. The fringed tunic atoned for bloodshed, the robe for slander, the breeches for sexual impropriety, the headdress for arrogance, the frontlet for brazenness, the sash for impure thoughts, the breastplate for neglect of the civil laws, and the ephod for idolatry. According to the Talmud Zvachim, they agree with everything that's on there. And let me see. I will just close this section with the question: if clothes are that important, why are we supposed to be buried in a plain linen shroud? Natalie.
I think that's for the people who are poor, and you have to have respect for everybody who dies, so that you don't want to embarrass anyone who cannot afford more than that. At least that's what I learned growing up in my house in New York.
And Jonathan, did you want to add something?
Well, I mean, I would just say, and it's nothing I've read anywhere or whatever, but it's kind of an interesting picture to me that, like, so when you wear a business suit, you're being in a business context for that. When you're wearing a wedding dress, you are playing the role at that time. You are doing the thing of being the bride. But when you die, you just are. It's just you. You know, you're not in any particular dress up for any particular situation. It's just you're essentially you for all time right there. So you're kind of stripped of all of your contexts when you're just reduced to, or I guess you could also say exalted in a way, but when you're pared down to just a simple covering, then it's like what you purely and really are. I guess it's kind of one way to look at it. It jumped out at me.
Yes,
but
Marina.
Oh, okay.
Could it be that when Messiah comes and everybody's resurrected, everybody's uniform and not distinguished by their clothes or what is in the grave with them?
I like that. Natalie.
So I think this is also connected to the box that you're put, the coffin that you're put into. You're supposed to just have a plain wooden box. And unfortunately, over the last years, I've been to more funerals than I like to say. And it is just unbelievable what people do with the coffin. And it's like bar mitzvahs. The more fancy you make it, the better it is. So I think there's something beautiful about the box and the clothes. Yes.
Okay, well, my 2 cents worth are that God doesn't care wearing what you look like, and the shroud has no pockets. You can't take it with you.
Well, Rabbi, it's kind of a reset in the same way that the Jubilee year is a reset. It's a social, economic leveling action.
A great thought. Anybody else? Okay, we need to move on. I'm afraid the time went by too quickly. I found you insightful, intelligent. I am so thrilled to be part of your community now. We will end with a prayer for the hostages before the Kaddish. When we get to the Kaddish, if it's convenient and you want to rise, please do. If it's inconvenient, stay seated. O God, be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. Send complete rescue and full redemption to those held captive by the enemy. And this is adapted by a prayer written by Rabbi Ofer Sabbath Beit Halachmi and Rabbi Rachel Sabbath Beit Halachmi, PhD. Strengthen the spirit and bring them our prayers that they be protected from all harm. Implant understanding in the heart of the enemy that they may return the captives in wholeness of body and spirit. Grant wisdom to the Israeli Defense Forces that they may secure freedom for the captives without further loss of life. Grant strength of spirit and courage of heart to all the sons and daughters of Abraham and Sarah to release the bonds of captivity and allow us all to live in freedom. They shall call upon me and I will answer them. I will be with them in distress. I will rescue them and honor them. And together we say, Amen. The way I understand it, there are 59 hostages left. According to President Trump, he says Hamas will have hell to pay if they aren't all released. Okay, finally, we're going to conclude with the Kaddish. These are the people who have passed away during the past month. If you add, please raise your hand. Amshid Abraham Bina, Marty Davich, Arlene Gelfand, Karen Rund later. And the yortzites that occurred during this past week: Bill Abrams, Dorothy Adlin, Mordo Ben Altabet, Rosalie Appel, Jack Becker, Luna Ben Ishai, Alfred Burke, Leonard Berman, Solly Berman, Sylvia Bialik, Rose Boroway, Pamela Branch, Ruth Bronte, Helen Brownlee, Irving Birkin, Jack Chinsky, Sylvia Chiswick, Menashe Eliachar, Ann Epstein, Inez Eskowitz, Helen Felsenthal, Alan Elliott Feuerstein, Max Martin Fisher, Harry Fleischman, Sonia Friedman, Judith Gelb, Benjamin Gelfond, Harry Getz, Harry Gilfenbane, Paul Globerson, Marlene Goldblum, Nikki Goldman, Charles Goodman, Simon Grant, Giza Gray, Stanley Grinstein, Jack Hertz, Yuet Chun Ho Chan, Linda Hochman, Louis Jacobs, Arthur Joseph, Judy Carmen, Ibrahim Kashani, Richard Keith, Leon Klappholtz, Joseph Stephen Klein, Gordon Kopeld, Beto Kukulievi, Marcus Labe, Marion Laurie, Jay Lentz, Oscar Lerman, Lois Jean Levy, Ruth Linick, Mildred Lomask, Joseph Lowenstein, Timothy Magnin, Lillian Mark, Deanna Mason, Arnold Mass, Ruth Madison, Jerry Mayerson, Yala Mishkanian, Wayne Myers, Murray Miller, Kathy Feinstein Moliver, Naima Naim, Shirley Oakham, David Osgood, Irving Part, Claire Persky, Michael Polivoy, Arlene Price Sklarski, Esther Rettinger, Shirley Ribicoff, Marshall Rissman, Ann Bessie Rosen, Sarah Rosen, Molly Rosenbaum, Patty Ross, Milton Rowan, Jacob Rubin, John Rubin, Joseph Samus, Mark Lloyd Savin, Ruth Savin, Shirley Shallman, Jane Scheiber, Jacqueline Rose Schiff, Hal Seeger, Albert Serlin, Anika Francesca Sr., Alfred Skluth, Bertha Skolnick, Sarah Slon, Ruth Soames, Viva Sprague, Regina Tarika, Janet Tenser, Louis Trentalis, Robert Velez, Joan Vogel, Albert Wagner, Alexander Wasserman, Shirley Weinstein, Anna Weissman, Yale White, Maurice Wilczek, Audrey Woolworth, Pearl Yeager, Inga Zelkowitz, Lois Zenkel, Lester Zickerman. Are there any names you want to add for your sites during this past week? We acknowledge those who have died defending the United States, the state of Israel, and those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We join together as a community and recite Kaddish together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Yoma divrach
Yamlich Machute, Chayechom, Uriomechom, Chayechom, Yisrael, Bagala, Uzman, Kariv, Yimru, Amen. Yehi Shnei Rabba Levarach, Leolam, Olam, Leomai. Yitbarach, Yishtavach, Yitpa'ar, Yitramam, Yitnasen. Yithadar, Yithalev, Yithalal, Shmei Kodesha, Barichu. Le'elam Ninkol Birchata,
Ata b'shirata, tushkurata
Tushbichata,
v'nechemata,
Da'amiran, Bi'Allah, Bi'Amru,
Amen.
Yehi Shlom
Rana Rabba min
Shemaya,
Shemaya,
V'chayim
v'chayim
Aleinu,
aleinu
Kol
v'alta
Yisrael,
Yisrael,
Bi'Amru,
v'imru. Amen.
Ose
Shalom.
Shalom,
B'Roma,
Huya Asa Shalom,
aleinu
Aleinu V'Kol
v'alta
Yisrael,
Yisrael,
Bi'Amru,
v'imru. Amen.
The one who sends peace, send comfort to those who mourn, and we say together, Amen.
Amen.
It's been truly my pleasure to meet you all, and I look forward to seeing you again in the very near future. Be happy, be healthy, because the older I get, the more important I realize that's the number one thing, be healthy.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Shalom,
Shalom.
shalom. Good to see everybody.
You have a question?
Yeah, do you have a moment, Rabbi, for a question?
Absolutely.
So I was raised in a Christian household, and when I was 19 years old, my first tour in Iraq with the Marines before we assaulted the city of Fallujah, we took receipt of these 13 D9R armored bulldozers from the Israeli Defense Forces. And I was with a combat engineering unit for my first tours, and I got to do some berming exercises in these bulldozers. And I saw how inside the cabs of these bulldozers, the Israeli soldiers had written these messages in English in black Sharpie pen on the inside of the dozers, these messages of encouragement for us as we were about to, assault the city of Fallujah in Iraq. And as a 19-year-old connected with, this truth that the Israelis are brothers and sisters in arms. And I went to Israel for the first time in 2009 to see about transferring my citizenship to be a bomb disposal tech, which is what my second job was in the Marine Corps for the IDF. But when I got there, my plan was to rent a motorcycle and road trip the country and, talk to some bomb techs in the IDF and try to transfer. I found out in Tel Aviv that they don't rent motorcycles in Israel. So I ended up getting a rental car. And then everyone I tried to ask, where are your bomb disposal troops? Right? Everyone was like, or who are you and why do you need to know? And no one would tell me. So I ended up just like, road tripping from Haifa down to Eilat, Beersheba, enjoying Israel. And then went again in 2023 in March, went for spring break and attended a rave down in the Negev for Purim, this fusion circus, like hanging with Israeli hippies. It was a super cool time, and I've just been fascinated by like the Jewish identity for, so long that, I don't know if I'm at a place where it's like I want to approach like a conversion and what that would look like necessarily. But, under the understanding that like the Jewish people are like the chosen people of God. And the way I see it, it's like the Jewish people, they write the lines of the limits of human experience to the highest heights, to the lowest lows, to the left and the right, everything, and it's so fascinating. So I love learning in this group with the Torah, but Yeah, well, I was just wondering your thoughts. Like, if someone is on such a track, like, is an eventuality a conversion? Is that like an appropriate orientation, or is it not necessary?
It is 100%, and I must tell you, your understanding of the situation and and your knowledge in general and your life experience is far greater than so many people who were born Jewish. Um, one of the things that I do in my spare time is I do conversions, but Wilshire has a wonderful program, wonderful and easy program, and it's immersive and it's short, and it's very meaningful. It is so meaningful.
Wow.
You sound to me like you're headed on that track.
Yeah, it feels like it. So, and then how does that work? Does someone just contact the temple via email, or because I've tried to go, in person to purchase a Torah actually recently because I attend law school just down the street at Southwestern, and I live on Wilshire and La Brea, so I pass the Wilshire Boulevard Temple every time I go to school, and the security folks were like, "You can't get in unless you have an appointment." And it was like, wasn't there just a bookstore I can go buy a Torah? And they're like, "No, you have to do that online." So yeah, how does one do that then? How do you contact the temple?
Um, their phone number is on their website. I can give it to you.
Oh, just call them.
Yeah, but
Okay.
to purchase Torah, I had to get mine in Israel.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
You could advertise, I suppose, for somebody who's selling one.
Yeah. I actually got word that there's the Mitzvah store. I think it's on Melrose. No, it's on Beverly. And apparently I
Yes.
believe what is it?
Well, I think it used to be called 613 because that's how many mitzvot there are. But it might just be now called the mitzvah store. And it was on Beverly last time I
Yeah.
went. But
So I'm planning on some.
they usually don't sell Torahs.
Oh, they don't. Oh, interesting.
Some advertised actually, I think even on eBay, but there are two things to consider with Torah. If there were any mistakes in it, or because it's all handwritten, it takes a scribe a year to do it.
Wow.
And if there are any mistakes or if it's been torn and then reconstructed, they consider it not kosher.
Wow.
So the one that I bought was very old, so we had to have it koshered, made kosher again, because it had some pages that were patched up. So the price between a non-kosher Torah and a kosher Torah is astronomical. You
Wow.
could probably reasonably priced non-kosher Torah, and if you're not going to use it for ceremonial things, it doesn't really. I don't see that it would matter to you that much.
Got it. Well,
But
fantastic.
Temple has such a wonderful conversion program. They really do.
Okay.
So
So just call them and make connection and yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate your time and your thoughts.
pleasure to talk to you. Be well.
Take care. Bye. Be well. Bye.
Eric, did you have anything you wanted to add? Helen, anything from you? If not, I will see you in 2 weeks, and Shabbat Shalom.